Hi, Sarah.
Hi there.
Hi, Sarah.
Good afternoon, everybody. You're most welcome. Everybody, this is a live stream meeting of the Standards Committee. I am Ruth Jaffrey, the Independent Chair of the Standards Committee. This meeting is open to the public and is being streamed live to YouTube via the Council website. It is being recorded for the purpose of the minutes. If for any reason the public can no longer hear or see the meeting over the live stream, we will adjourn until the connection has been re-established. I would like to remind members of the meeting's etiquette, that this is being circulated and the proceedings will apply for remote attendees. All members should have their microphones muted and cameras turned on. Members are reminded you must remain on camera throughout the meeting and ensure you are alone in the room. Before we start, I would like to confirm which committee members and officers are present, and can the facilitator please confirm the members and officers present?
Yes, Chair, of course. For the members, as well as yourself, we've got Councillor David Downs, Councillor Andrew Josbury, Councillor Tricia Clough, Councillor Clive Moseby and Councillor Deborah Watson. We also have Ian Kirk present, who's one of the Council's independent persons. And from the officers, we have Sarah Sternberg, the Monitoring Officer, Kevin Shillito, the Deputy Monitoring Officer, Nicola Calver, the Governance Manager, Anne Bedford, Customer Service and Complaints Officer, and myself and Martin Derbyshire from the Governance team.
Right, thank you very much. Right then, are there any apologies of absence, please?
I've not received any in advance, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. So we'll go on to item number 2, which is urgent business. Can I confirm I don't have any urgent business for this meeting today? There's nothing come through? Right,
Chair.
Thank you very much. Item number 3 is declarations of interest. Do members have any interest to declare? Anybody? Right, we'll go on to item number 4, which is the minutes of the Standards Committee held on the 30th of November 2020. So can we all go through and the last minutes and going through? Are you all happy they are correct record of the last minutes?
I'll move them, Chair.
Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second them, Chair.
Chair.
Oh.
And then can I have a vote on them, please? Thank you. Now we go on to item number 5, which is the customer service standards and complaints, comments and complaints report, and that's Anne Bedford.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just walk you through. This is my biannual report, which I bring to you twice a year. This is for the period of the 1st of April 2020 to the 30th of September 2020. It's to provide information on the number of compliments, comments and complaints that the council's received for that period, and also performance in relation to customer service standards. So just to briefly walk you through it, our standards have, we've almost met all of our customer service standards in what is actually been quite a trying time for the council. And I'd like to note and thank departments for the continuing efforts in trying to meet these standards in what has been a challenging year. So basically from telephones, we have 97% of incoming calls have been answered corporately within 20 seconds during this period. A couple of departments, because of the coronavirus arrangements that we've got in place, and also other officers being deployed to different duties. Obviously, there's been slight slippage with some departments. Also, it's showing, excuse me, that we've not received many calls. It's because we can't record those calls that are being forwarded onto different mobiles, etc. I've got my mobile on divert, etc. So it's about finding about how we can report on that in future. Contact centres, again, a slight slippage in their standards. Again, that is the amount of resources we've got within customers' contact centres. But again, we're putting things in place to meet those standards in future. Emails, we've received quite a few emails. It's still a very popular method of contact, and you can see that 98.5% of those emails that come through inquiries at Bolsover have been responded to fully within 8 working days. Face-to-face contact, we've not done any monitoring, and this is because we're not actually, contact centres have been closed for quite a period of time during this reporting period, and we're not actually encouraging customers to come into contact centres because a lot of our customers need to shield or socially distance. With regards to compliments, we've received quite a few compliments, which is quite cheering. 123 compliments for this period, which shows that the services that we are providing are very well received. It's showing good customer service. That is more than we had for the same period of last year. Comments, we had 65 and all were acknowledged and passed to the respective departments within the target time of 3 working days. We dealt with quite a few bin recycling comments during that time when we had to suspend the service, and they did receive a response. Frontline resolution complaints, again, some 93% were responded to within timescale of 3 working days, which is actually an improvement on the figure for last year, which was 91%. So that shows that the departments are actually responding to customers within that timescale. Formal investigation complaints, we responded to 88% over the period. The first period, it was only 70%, and that was again due to COVID arrangements with people not being in the office to be able to provide information. That went up to 98% in Q2, so that evens out to 88% over the full period. And it shows in the first period, we didn't have so many resources, and now we're back on track. With regards to internal review stage 3 complaints, 94% were responded to within the 20 working days standard, and there was only one which brought that down, that was responded to outside of that period, and that was responded to in 21 working days. Appendix 3F shows the status of Ombudsman complaints as of the 19th of November 2020. During that period, we received 1 decision from the Housing Ombudsman Service of no maladministration, and 1 from the LGSCO, which was just outside of the reporting period, and that was that they couldn't investigate the complaint, and that's because the complainant had already gone through the planning inspector, so they'd gone through a different route to get resolution. So the recommendation is that standards note the overall performance of compliments, comments and complaints, and also the customer service standards, particularly in the light of the constraints that officers have had to be working under during the arrangements. Does anybody have any questions or queries on this at all?
Councillor Mosley?
Yeah, it's a comment really. I'd just like to thank Anne and all the team, well, everybody in our team who's got involved in this. Quite rightly, as you say, it's been a difficult time. We've had to have new working practices put in. Never tried and tested before. I went had a dry run on this. It was straight in there. And I think it's overall it's a good report, and I don't think we'd expect any better. It's a really good report in it all. A bit of wood pull out is that, the compliments on revenues and benefits on page 16, 35 of them. And I think that's extremely good, really, because in these times when it's difficult, to pay your bills, get your benefits and all that sort of thing, it's good that the team up there are working hard and doing their bit in it to try and, maintain some sort of level of normality for a lot of our residents. So, quite honestly, Chair, I think it's a good report. I think we should compliment all staff and officers involved in it all, and just thank them for all the work and effort and the adaptability that they've all shown to us, the way they work to deliver these services. So, really, really good report, Anne. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there anybody else wanting to ask any questions? In that case, can I have somebody move this recommendation, please?
I'll move recommendation 6.0.
And can I have somebody to second it, please?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you, Mick. Can I have all those in favour, please? All those against? Any abstentions? And I take the motion as being carried. Right, can I go on to
Thank
item
you.
number 6, which is the Local Government Association Model Code of Conduct. And I think that's you, Sarah.
It is. As members are aware, the LGA consulted on a model code of conduct last year following a review of local government ethical standards by the Committee for Standards in Public Life. It was felt that there needed to be more structure and uniformity in the code, hence the model. Having seen Handforth Parish Council's recent video sensations, some parish councils clearly do need to be helped to put proper arrangements in place. We've also found in the districts that some parish councils have the very simple minimalist codes of conduct, which makes conducting the processes for complaints very hard. When we have the district's final version, I will be promoting it to parish councils. I will write out to them and invite them to use our version. The intention today is to go through the draft, get members' comments, and come back to Standards Committee in April with a final draft. This can then be considered and recommended to the annual meeting. Sorry about that. We will be doing training. We're already setting up a mid-term induction for members, and it will be part of that training, and we've not lost sight that we need to do some parish councils training as well. We thought it worth going through this section by section. To avoid it being me droning on, we're going to do this as a shared thing, but I'm going to start. So the first point on the draft code is a joint statement from the Local Government Association and whoever. What I thought in relation to this is it's very good at setting out the importance of the council role and having a strong ethical framework. I would suggest that in our version, we add to that what the district council's thoughts are on having very strong backing for the council role and a good, strong ethical framework. Would you like me to carry on until there's a question?
Yes, please.
Okay, that's great. Well, that's the first one. The introduction is fairly similar. It's an explanation that's needed, but I suspect that we should add something from the district council's perspective as well to that introduction. Definitions seem to be straightforward. The purpose of the code makes it clear that it's about you as councillors ensuring your own behaviour is acceptable, and it encourages, quite rightly, support from me, Deputy Monitoring Officer, Legal and Governance. So we're always there to help is the message. General Principles of Councillor Conduct quotes the 7 Nolan Principles. These are actually in Appendix A to the Model Code. We've already started having discussions how we feel these need to be in the main body of the code. So we probably bring them forward in a draft to somewhere around this point. They've not necessarily been part of everyone's code of conduct, but they've certainly been a part of the district's code of conduct. I'd just like to say that many of the things in here, whereas they may be firming up things, are things that we already have in our current code. So it's useful additions to the large extent, not something completely new. This section then goes on to outline general principles of council conduct. These are not a surprise and largely reflect what we have in the member officer protocol. The applicability of the code is one area where the code writers are seeking to extend its remit. Currently, due to a case about 15 years ago, the code is restricted to councillors acting as councillors and does not affect their private life. Whereas what they're proposing here doesn't extend it massively into private life, it does extend it into the areas where you as councillors give the impression you're acting as councillors, even if you're not. So that is an extension, but I think we all know that the public don't see a distinction between the private and public life of a councillor anyway, so it may not be a big thing. Okay, I think that's me for the moment. Kev? Is it you next? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, apologies. Chair, we've got 2 indications to speak at this point. Did you want to take Councillor Tricia Clough and Councillor Deborah Watson have both indicated they wish to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. It's Councillor Clough from Alt Hucknall Ward. On page 27 in large numbers, page 4 of 17, where it talks about face-to-face meetings and online or telephone meetings, do we need to put in there formal and informal meetings?
Yes, Chair, we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Was there somebody else who wanted to ask a question?
Yes, me please, Chair. Councillor Deborah Watson. Can I go ahead? You're on mute, Chair. Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
Thank you. Just going back to what you just said, Sarah, about public perception of whether you're acting as a councillor or you're not. Now, I know some councillors choose to create a separate councillor page on, for example, on social media, don't they? Personally, yeah. Because probably it appeals to my sense of laziness in that I can't be diddled to update 2 different pages with information, and I would end up having to invite all the same people to join my councillor page if I did a separate one. So how does that affect that then? If you're saying public will generally assume you're a councillor because you are a councillor, so can you ever really differentiate by using a separate page, or would you always, because in my mind you would always be councillor on that page? I mean, obviously I still put personal things on, like photos of what I'm doing, following my favourite football team and things like that. That's obviously nothing to do with anybody else, is it? But it seems to me it remains as clear as mud. Or am I wrong?
No, I've read this and thought it's going to be difficult to interpret, but in terms of social media pages, correspondence or anything where you say you're a councillor, if you have councillor on it, immediately the impression is given. So in those circumstances, that you are acting as a councillor. So in those circumstances, this is clear. If you say councillor, you're giving the impression it's that you're acting as a councillor. But we'll wait and see how it pans out with cases, what we hear, professional advice, etc. Don't know if you want to add anything, Kev.
I think the only thing that I'd add to that is, especially when it comes to social media, it's going to come down to looking at the contents of the individual posts as well, to look at what you're talking about and whether or not it's something that potentially relates to your role as a councillor. Using your example, if it's about a football team, then frankly, I don't think anyone's going to interpret it as you acting as councillor. But if it's about a local project, for example, that you've been involved in through, say, the parish council, then you're into, looking at the individual details to then have a look and see what capacity you were acting in.
Is there anybody else that wants to ask any questions?
Yeah.
David Down?
You want to take Clive first, Chair, please?
Would you like to speak, Clive?
Or he starts jumping up and down on his table. No. No, well, I don't know quite what that's made of, Dave, but thanks anyway. All I'm going to say is, Sarah, many years ago, when we used to have pre-meetings before, or briefings, I should say, before elections, we used to put, I can remember on one occasion we had police come to one of those, and they were on about Facebook pages, and they were saying something that during PERDA, you perhaps ought to come off of Facebook, because if somebody puts a derogatory message on your Facebook page, even though you know nothing about it, that can be deemed that, it can cause you a problem. It can maybe debar you from standing even for office. I just wondered if that's still the case nowadays, as more and more Facebook and these other platforms seem to be coming to fruition.
Chair, absolutely, it's still the case that you have to be incredibly careful at election time. It's nothing to do with the code of conduct or you're acting as a councillor, but it is as you as a candidate. And yes, there is an offence of more or less bringing a fellow candidate into disrepute. I can't remember the precise wording, but yes, you do have to be careful. And if I say that most of my time during PERDA in 2019, when we had district and parish elections, was spent working on people complaining about social media, to the point where at times I was doing nothing else but answering these complaints about social media. Yes, it is incredibly important. I'm not sure whether the police would still advise you to come off. It seems the clearest and cleanest way to do it, though, and it's not for long. If you think the notice of election goes up around March the 26th, and we have the elections on May the 6th, it's not a huge period of time, but it just makes it clear, doesn't it? It's you can't have anybody posting anything on there, and you can't inadvertently post something yourself, which is not acceptable.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Thanks, Chair. And thanks, David.
Can we have Councillor David and then Councillor Clough after that, please?
I'm just going to reiterate something that Deborah was saying about the actual role of a councillor, and the fact that whether you are out in the community as yourself, the community still see you as a councillor. So no matter how you're talking or speaking to that person, they would then go off and say, I've been talking to Councillor so-and-so, and they said this, this, and this, or they've posted this, this, and that. And I think we've got to be very careful, because personally, I've had somebody locally, a resident, sort of attacking me on a Facebook page about certain things, and I've just not responded, because a lot of it what he's saying is pretty much fake news. But how do we, we can't police that, can we? We've just got to be careful on how we react to that.
Yes, that's absolutely the case. Although this draft code talks about, Chair, if I might, although the draft code talks about the public having respect for councillors, it is absolutely impossible to police that. And yes, it is how you respond to the provocation, which is frankly what it is. So yes, that's what I was trying to say, that you should always have in mind that you are councillors, and that's how you're going to be perceived.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Clough, you want to come with a question?
Mine's not a question. It's just to make people aware that the period of time before the elections is now known as the period of heightened sensitivity, and we should refrain from using the term PERDA now.
Are there anybody with any more questions?
Yeah, I'd like to say that.
Yeah.
Well, all this Facebook and how you act and everything, it's totally impossible to police, and you've just got to hope that the people who deal with the complaints and what have you see it for what it is. And I know Sarah looks at all these complaints, and she's very fair about everything. And but no, I don't think whatever you put in writing, I don't think it'll ever cure anything, because people like to complain, and same with Facebook and what have you. It's a matter of opinion a lot of times, and you've just got to hope that the monitoring officer who deals with the complaints sees it as such. But I don't think there's anything that you can really do, but you can strengthen it, obviously. But you've got to be careful and not to strengthen it too much to the detriment of the councillors. So that's all. Thank you.
Right. Who's going to talk about the next bit then?
That's me, thank you, Chair. So just turning to the different elements of the standards of councillor conduct, and these are the specific areas which, if you breach them, could result in action being taken following a complaint. The first one on the list is respect. Now, this is something that appears in our current code and in most of the parish codes in very limited and vague sort of terms. The model code clarifies the extent of this. It provides a clear explanation of what respect is. It goes as far as to mention the sort of where you're dealing with political debate and where the limits of that lie in terms of personal attacks on others. And it gives members guidance as well on the handling of situations where they are the recipient of disrespectful behaviour. Turning to the next section, that's on bullying, harassment and discrimination. This is a relatively new development in the code. It's not something that is dealt with in any great detail in the current ones. And what it does is it effectively binds the councillor not to bully, harass or discriminate, and it roots all three of those requirements in the relevant sort of legal basis. So you're looking at the ACAS guidance on bullying, for example, which means that it's about the effect on the individual, not necessarily the intention of the councillor who's doing it. Harassment is based around the criminal offence, and discrimination is based within equalities law. So it's got that statutory foundation to it and a clear explanation for what's expected of members. It also mentions under equalities that, of course, the councillor could potentially find themselves causing the authority to breach equalities legislation. And that's something that a councillor must be particularly careful of. I think Nikki has the next section, unless there's any questions.
Okay, so section 3 sets out about impartiality of officers of the council, and none of the wording within the model code is new to members of standards or to any member, because this is set out quite clearly already within our officer member code, our protocol. The only thing that's different is the way the wording is set out, particularly, you know, making comment about members, elected members and co-opted members must not try to force officers to act any differently or change their advice or change the content of a report, if doing so prejudices their professional integrity.
Do we have any questions, anybody? Yes, Councillor Andrew.
I think it's me.
Oh, we still got. Right then.
Sorry.
Karen, do you want to carry on?
Well, I want to say something, actually.
Sorry.
I've had complaints levelled against me on several occasions, and it's very difficult. I think because of your background, possibly. I had years working down the pit, and people who work down the pit are not sensitive at all. Like, you can say anything to them, but other people are sensitive, and you've got to try and respect that. But you're still yourself. When it all boils down to it, you're still yourself, and the way that you've been all your life is very difficult to put to one side. Things that I might say that might upset someone would not upset someone else. So again, it's a matter of degree, and it's a very difficult one to police, I should imagine. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
I do think it's sometimes when you're trying to dealing with complaints, it's always, you know, it's not easy because we're all individual personalities, so it isn't an easy thing to do.
If I
Any
might,
more questions?
if I might, Chairman, just on that point, you're absolutely right. It is incredibly difficult. You have to do it as the reasonable person, the objective person, and try and stand back from your own views and what people generally feel. You've got to look for what is the right answer, yeah, and without being sort of biased in any way. And it is incredibly difficult. But it goes back to my favourite, the man on the Clapham omnibus, and what would he think?
Do we have any more questions, anybody? Yes, Councillor David Downs.
I was just going to sort of follow on from what Councillor Josbury said, and about it is difficult in the way that we've moved forward in the way that we handle things now. What was accepted back then, Councillor Josbury, as a miner or as in a mining village, is not acceptable sort of nowadays, it's not tolerated nowadays because the language and the terms have obviously they've changed, they've evolved, and it's become more apparent that it perhaps wasn't the right terminology that we used back then. And I think it's differentiating, sorry, I can't even say it, differentiating between what we could and what we can now. And it is difficult, but we have to be mindful of how we speak and how we put certain words into contexts. Thank you.
I'd just like to answer that because I always try and be mindful of what I say, but and this will get me into trouble with some people. Some people are just mardy. It's as easy as that. Some people are just mardy, and some people just like to complain. And some people just like to have a dig at you, no matter how much good you're doing. So you know, it's. I understand what you're trying to say, but I do try to be polite, right? But I also call a spade, and some people don't like that, right? And that's where you can get this blurred vision of whether you're being rude or whether you're just telling them the truth, and they don't like it. It's as simple as that.
Is there anybody else who wants to ask any more questions, please? Right then, can I have?
Excuse me, Chair. Councillor. Thank you. Yeah, I think we do have to be really mindful of the terminology and the adjectives that we use when we're talking to people these days. We've all come from different backgrounds. I remember that some of the terminology that was used in my family household now, which was thought to be polite, is not seen as polite these days. And it's a matter that everybody, especially if they're a councillor, have to educate themselves and move with the times.
Does anybody else want to say anything? Is there any more to be said on this item? If not, can I have somebody move?
Yeah.
Yes, Kevin?
Chair, we've got a few more to address. I may move on to section 4 of the code. This addresses confidentiality and the access to information. It's fair to say that whilst this has been mentioned usually as a one-line reference in existing codes, this is greatly expanded, far more guidance for councillors on what's expected, and it's broken down into 3 main areas. First of which is to ensure that there's no disclosure of confidential information, except in very limited circumstances, such as where you've got consent, where it's to obtain legal advice, or effectively whistleblowing. The second one is not to use knowledge that you've gained as a councillor for any improper purposes. And the third one is not to deny access to members of the public or to information that they should be entitled to. All of this is rooted in the relevant data protection laws that were updated a couple of years ago. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any questions on this item?
Chair, you've got indications from both Councillor Clive Moseby and Deborah Watson. Councillor Deborah Watson.
Right, Councillor Deborah Watson.
Yeah, just wondering on that, just looking through, unless I've missed it anywhere, it doesn't say anything about not secretly obtaining information that you shouldn't obtain either, which I do know actually happened in my parish.
And what I'd say to that, Chair, is if members felt that that should be included as an addition, then I'm sure we can put it forward for consideration.
Yeah. If I might, Chair, just to come in on that, if they're obtaining something they're not entitled to see, that is probably a breach of data protection.
Yes, Chair, it is. And I think you probably recall the case that I spoke to you about and the information behind it, and what actually went on was submitted. Is it the ICO, Information Commissioners?
Yes, that's right.
And because there was no actual proof that there was an actual criminal intent behind this person seeking that information, they would not take any further action, which quite sad really, because said person shouldn't have been snooping through a parish council owned computer to find something that, well, I can't really comment on the reasons said person had for looking, but basically at the end of the day, it's the same as I wouldn't go into the planning office and look through one of the planning officer's computer and try and find information, would I? And I think we would all accept that that would be fundamentally wrong. And I think just something, giving a nod to that might be helpful.
Yeah,
I don't know.
certainly include it.
Then fine, I take your superior advice.
No, I certainly think we can include it. I was just making the point that, you know, a breach of data protection is a breach of data protection. Yeah.
Right. Who was it who wanted the other question to be asked?
It's Amiru Clive.
Go ahead, question.
Okay, you were muted. I couldn't tell what you were telling me. It really is on data protection, GDPR. I mean, it's an extremely important topic and subject these days. You know, we've all been used to writing people's names and addresses down on bits of paper and leaving them lying about and all this sort of thing. And I do think, whilst there's no direct reference to GDPR and data protection within this section 4 confidentiality, I just think, can we not put something in there just to really strengthen it and to, you know, to try and express to members just how extremely important this storing of this data is, you know, to the point where sometimes you're supposed to have something you can lock it up in so nobody can get at it, you know. It does just worry me, because in doing our jobs, we deal with a lot of people's individual data, whether it's phone numbers, addresses, names, or whatever, relatives and whatever. And I do think we can't stress enough how we must keep that confidential, unless, I suppose, the person who it refers to gives us express written permission that we can use it in order to further their complaint or their inquiry. So it just really try and firm that bit up within it, if that's possible. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I don't know if Sarah wants to add anything, but I think there's no reason we can't cross-reference what's in the draft with the relevant GDPR references.
Yeah, and indeed, if appropriate, the member officer protocol, which deals with what information members can obtain.
Are there any more questions, anybody? Right, who's dealing with the next section then, please?
Chair, I'm dealing with the next two. First of which is 5, disrepute. I think this is fairly clear. It's re-emphasised here that council is judged by the public. It's just what we've been discussing, and that judgment is not restricted to the councillor's public life. In some ways, council is not as free as a private individual because their actions reflect on the council's reputation. So when doing anything as a councillor, council should consider whether it is the right thing to do, whether it's compliant with the code and other rules, and whether it has any reputational impact. But I think that's really just what it says there. In terms of number 6, use of position, this again is a fairly obvious one. It's a reminder that councils are acting on behalf of the community and shouldn't be using council access in their own interests. You represent the community, but again, that's not new. That's something you're familiar with. And then I think it's Nikki next.
Yeah, so number 7, use of local authority resources and facilities. So everything that is set out here is pretty much made fairly explicit already within the members' allowance scheme that's already within your constitution. However, this sets it out very, very clearly, ensuring such resources are not used for political purposes, and gives some examples of what the code would class as resources. Number 8, in terms of complying with the code of conduct, of course, every member, when they take on the office of councillor, sign their declaration form saying that they'll undertake the code of conduct. The code of conduct has training already attached as one of its appendices, of where it sets out what it considers to be essential training. Although this section in 8 now makes it really explicit about cooperation with investigations and behaviour during an investigation, and agreeing to comply with the sanctions that may be imposed. Number 9 is the section. Oh, apologies, Chair. There are some members that wanted to
Councillor
speak.
Clough wanted to speak, ask a question. Councillor
Thank
Clough?
you, Chair. In 7.2, Nikki, on page 7 of 17, when I read it, I think there's a word missing. It says, I will, when using the resources of the local or authorising their use by others. Should the word authority be in there?
I think you're right. I think it should be.
Thanks.
Councillor Mosby?
Yeah, sorry to be a pain again. Just underrating it all, number 8.1. I undertake code of conduct training provided by my local authority. Is there any, I think I know answer, but can we mandate people that they must undertake this training? I mean, there are such areas as planning and licensing we expect them to do it in order to fulfil their functions on those particular committees. But as regards this, is there any way we can mandate members to make sure that they do actually undertake this training on the code of conduct, and it is marked down, if you like, on your tick-off list that you've done it type of idea?
So in regard to mandatory training, you do have a section already appended to your code of conduct of what you consider to be the essential training. That's not something that the officer corps could mandate for members to undertake in. This would be for political group leaders to enforce through the group system.
Is there anybody else? Yes, Councillor Downs?
Yeah, I think we've been here before, haven't we, Nikki? We're trying to get people to attend mandatory training, and that there's no consequence to anything if they don't attend. And it's a bit of a grey area that keeps cropping up. But I understand understand what you're saying.
In regard to the code of conduct training that we're going to be rolling out at the midterm induction, this will be recorded for any member that is unable to attend, to ensure that every member has access to that training, to ensure that we do that. And we do work very, very hard on member training to ensure that all that stuff that you've classed as essential is delivered in some way to every member of the authority that requires it.
Chair, so quickly, I was asked a question. I mean, obviously, groups enforcing stuff at the end of the day, we mentioned Nikki. Could I ask that when we do underdo this second sort of set of training, if there are members that don't attend, could you let the group leader, the leader of that particular group of that members in, let them know that they've not been there, so that we can then actually pick up on it. Otherwise, it could again, slide under radar if we aren't careful. So if that can be done and it's not a breach of GDPR or something else, that'd be lovely, please.
Yes, of course. Chair, if I may go on to section 9, this is about interests. Again, there's nothing within there that members shouldn't be familiar with. Our current code of conduct really does set out very, very clearly all the details about disclosure of interests, which could be referred to on a revision of the code. And the last section is on gifts and hospitality. And we do have currently a code for gifts and hospitality guidance, which is on page 206 of your constitution. this wording really just strengthens the advice around the gifts and hospitality procedures. And in regard to the levels, I'm assuming in the model code here where it says 50, that is not in accordance with what Bolsover has set. So in a revision, it would be whatever level Bolsover has set.
Any questions, anybody? Councillor Mosby?
I've been a pain, I know I am, but I mean, I think it's great we've got, you know, a sort of model code of conduct here. I just hope that all other authorities, whether it's fire, whether it's police, or whether it's any other local authority, and indeed, obviously, as you say, parish and town councils, do accept this, because at one time we used to have various bits and bobs of different codes of conduct, and they all were never the same, and you didn't know where you were with some of them. So can we make a plea to other authorities to try and let's get one code wherever we are, we know what we're dealing with at the end of the day.
Yes, Sarah, do you want to speak? Sarah, you're on mute.
Do you know, I haven't done that for ages. Sorry about that. As I said at the beginning, I will be writing to parish and town councils with our agreed draft after the next meeting and saying this is what we're going to recommend for approval. We would recommend that you do the same. You're quite right, people have all sorts. I've seen codes where they simply state the Nolan principles and that is their code, and it doesn't offer enough guidance to members of that particular authority. In terms of other authorities, it is entirely up to them and their monitoring officers what they do. We usually get together, so maybe we'll get together on this as well.
Thank you, thanks, Sarah.
Any more questions, anybody? Right then, can I have someone to move this item, please?
I'll move it, Chair.
And then can I have somebody second it, please?
I'll second it, Chair.
And then can I have all those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Then the motion is carried. Can we go on to item number 7? Code of practice for audio and visual footage of meetings. I think that's you, Nicola.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a proposal for agreed way of working in regard to audio and video footage of meetings. Any member that will have seen Handforth Parish Council will understand a reason for maybe bringing a code of practice forward. So this is already a way of working. So this is how the authority currently operates in regard to this. However, this report sets out some of the context, the legal context behind some of the decisions that are taken, and sets out the way of working. In particular, if I can draw your attention towards the end of the code, where we talk about where footage is exempt, we would not live stream that. Where footage displays behaviour, where the monitoring officer has a discussion with the chair of standards and they deem the behaviour to be offensive to the public anyway, that would be removed and edited and re-uploaded. It talks once again about asking members to behave in a manner in accordance with the virtual meeting standard of orders. But of course, as well, this applies to after the pandemic as well, and refers to the requirements of the Constitution. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
All right, anybody got any? Well, if there are no questions, can I have somebody move the recommendation, please? Which is on page 4. Can I have somebody second it then, please?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clough. Right, can I have all those in favour, please? All those against? Any abstentions? Then I take it the motion has been carried. Then we can go on to the next item. Richard,
That's me again, Chair. Sorry, that's code of practice in
Okay.
regard to vacating office. So in a similar vein to the last report, this is the current way of working that the council operates, but again brings some legal context around the ways of working that we do currently, and the actions and the application of that law by the authority in the circumstances that are outlined there. It also refers quite a lot to Section 85 of the Local Government Act, which members will know more commonly as the 6-month rule, where a member needs to attend a meeting of the authority within 6 months. And it talks through the dispensation process to make that clear for members. But also it puts in context of when the requests need to be made for that dispensation so that it can be administrated correctly. One thing I will bring your attention to is 3.3. At the end of that paragraph, it does have a comment there that's been left in from our vetting process of the report. Please ignore that last few words on there. But this is really just referring to a proposal that's later on in the agenda today in regard to the review of the Constitution to give delegated power to the monitoring officer to either authorise a short-term dispensation in regard to that 6-month rule up until the date of an ex-council meeting or an extraordinary meeting, so that council can consider that request. Following on from the briefing for the chair, I had a look at how this code of practice might apply to a co-opted member of the authority, and we went back to the legislation to try to understand how this might apply. And in reference to a co-opted member, both sections 85 and 86 of the Local Government Act don't apply. And therefore, I've drafted in some additions to this code of practice and what we would do as an authority in respect to co-opted members. And if you're happy, Chair, may I put those amendments up on the screen for members to see?
Please do.
Bear with me a moment. I'm hoping that everyone is able to see that now. So that would be inserting at 1.7 an explanation that section 85 and 86 don't apply to co-opted members. And then a further insertion for 2.8 and 2.9, where it says where a committee or outside body to which the council has appointed a co-opted member wishes to replace its nominee, the matter would be referred to council, and council alone can determine whether to accede to the request. And also just stating, of course, that matter would be dealt with in private session, and gives an example of a reason why a co-opted member may be recommended for removal. And then one further insertion, just to make clarity within section 5, just an additional wording on 5.2 to say that in the case of a co-opted member, that the governance manager rather than the elections manager would manage the replacement of that. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, on the code of practice.
Do we have anybody with any questions, please?
Yes, please, Chair.
Right, yes.
Thank you.
I've got some.
Yeah, can you tell me, please, Nicola or Sarah, one of you, is this actually local government law or is this our policy? And the reason I'm asking, does this apply equally to parish councils as to the district council?
Okay, so the way that a member vacates office is set out with both within the LGHA 89 and also the Local Government Act 72. So they are set in legislation. Where it comes to section 2 about application of the law, this is the way the authority interprets that law and will put into place that legislation. So everything suggested with it further on is in accordance with the law.
Okay, thanks.
And yes, it does apply to parish councils in the same way.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wants to ask any questions?
Councillor Mosby's indicating, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Mosby.
Councillor Mosby, you're muted.
Councillor Mosby.
I've done it. I'm there. I've done it. I reckon I think somebody keeps muting me. I don't blame them if I'm being honest about it all. Anyway, that's another story. Dispensation process 3.1. It says an extension for dispensations made in writing to the monitoring officer from the member concerned. If that member concerned is not very well and unable to write that, but probably things are going to go right in a few weeks' time, a month's time, could somebody else write that dispensation letter to the monitor officer or deputy on his or her behalf, or has it got to be from the member?
I think when this comes to practical terms, you say, for example, if you've got a member of the authority who's very, very unwell, then I feel that it probably would be appropriate for a representative to request that dispensation on behalf of that member. I think the most important part of that was that the request would be made in writing.
Thank you, Chair. Bless you, and thanks, Nikki.
Are there any more questions then? If there's no more questions, then can I have somebody move this item, please?
I'll move it, Chair.
Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it if nobody else is. Sorry.
Can I have all those in favour, please? All those against, please? Any abstentions? I take it this item has been moved then. Thank you very much. Can we go on to the next item, which is a joint whistleblowing policy annual report? And I think that's you, Nikki, again.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the whistleblowing policy has been reviewed. There are no amendments suggested. So this is the exact same policy as you looked at this point last year, with no amendments put forward. Also, just that the monitoring officer reports at this point no instances of whistleblowing throughout the municipal year. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any questions on this policy, please?
I'll move it, Chair.
And can I have a vote then, please? All those in favour? Thank you very much. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Then this motion has been carried. The next item is the review of the council's constitution.
Thank you, Chair. So this is part 4 of the review of the Council's constitution. As you know, you receive a report with amendments put forward to each meeting of standards. 1.3 is the table in the report. It sets out in the shaded areas what's already been through this committee. The unshaded areas are those which are detailed in Appendix 1, which we will go through in a moment. And then the second set of shaded areas of the constitution that we'll be looking at are areas that will be brought forward either at your April meeting or new into the next municipal year. Therefore, Chair, if I may go straight on to the appendix to talk through the amendments that are here today for discussion. The first area of review is the contract procurement rules, whereby the head of procurement has put forward a suggestion that the request for quotations in regard to tenders be increased to £75,000, and it's currently set at £50,000. The rationale behind it is that it's suggested to help local businesses that exist to compete for council work and to help develop future companies. And the stress that's been put on this is particularly important due to the pandemic's effect on the economy. Chair, would you like me to run through all the areas first, or would you like to do it area by area?
If everybody's happy, go through them all, and then anybody can ask any questions at the end.
Thank you, Chair. The second area is adding a footnote to 3.3 of the council procedure rules. This is just to add a little bit of clarity about the restriction of the agenda for an extraordinary meeting, just providing a little bit of clarity. And that's already been undertaken under the monitoring officer's delegation in regard to housekeeping processes. Just wanted to let members know that that had been undertaken. The third item is requesting a delegation to be made to the environmental health officers in respect to some delegations already made to the head of planning and the planning manager in relation to section 215 of the Town and Country Planning Act. So it's just proposed that that delegation be made to the environmental health officers, who are the officers who actually instigate the need for that action. The next suggestion is the one that I've mentioned in the code of practice just a little bit earlier, to add a delegation to the monitoring officer to provide dispensation under section 85 of the Local Government Act, where an application for dispensation in regard to that 6-month rule has been received, but the council don't have a meeting to hear it, and just a short dispensation until the council is able to do that. And the final suggestion come forward for discussion today is that when we present the review of the Constitution report, every time it goes to council, we request a delegation to the monitoring officer to make changes to the Constitution arising from any new legislation that comes forward, any administrative errors that we pick up, typographical errors, or where we find a conflict in the interpretation. And it's just requested for expediency that that actually be incorporated within the delegation scheme to save members having to vote on an additional recommendation every time we bring the report forward. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Are there any questions, please? Right then, if we don't have any questions, can I have somebody move this recommendation, please?
I'll move the recommendation at 6.1, Chair.
Can I have somebody second it, please?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you very much. Can I have a vote then? All those in favour, please? All those against? Any abstentions? I take it this motion has been carried. And then the next item is the code of practice. Oh, I've done that one, beg your pardon. It's the next one is complaints update.
Thank you,
Item
Chair.
11.
Yes, this is a verbal update, but at your April meeting, I will bring the agreed format back for you in writing to show you the outcome for the year. At the moment, we have 3 open in 2019, from 2019, in relation to parish councils. These are coming swiftly to an end. 2020, we have 5 still outstanding, 2 relating to district councillors and 3 relating to parish councillors. And we have 1 district council 1 in 2021. Thank you, Chair.
Do you have any questions? Right then, can I have somebody move the recommendation, please?
I'd formally move the report, the verbal report or verbal update, whatever.
Yeah, update, yeah. And
Yeah.
can I have somebody second it, please?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Clough. All right, can I have all those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Motion has been carried. The last item today will be the working programme for 2020 and 2021. Who's doing that? Is that you, Nikki?
I think that's me, Chair.
Oh,
Sorry.
Sorry, Amy.
That's all right. Work programme set out in the papers. Obviously, there's only 1 meeting left now of the municipal year. So it's just really if you consider what you've got left on there, and if there's anything you want to add or amend on the programme, let me know. We will make those changes.
Does anybody want to add anything for the next meeting?
Chair?
Yes, Councillor.
Can I just ask what happened to the member champion thing? They were supposed to be taken to council. That seems to have died a death. We haven't discussed it or anything.
Can anybody answer Councillor Mosby on that one?
Okay, if may I, Chair, is that okay? we will have a look into where we're up to on the member champion issue. If it's ready to come to April standards, if it's appropriate to bring it, then I'll make sure that that's brought in front of members. If not, I'll let you know at the next meeting why it's not with you.
Thank you very much.
Can I just come in, Chair? Because it's on your minutes from this time that you resolved that the Standards Committee agree the draft role profile and support the submission to Council the proposal to establish member champions as set out in the report. So actually, I think, sorry, Nikki, we need to report to Council next time rather than Standards Committee.
Yeah,
In which case, Chair, I'll put forward a report to Council for April.
Yeah, that was my understanding of it, Sarah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. One thing I would like, Amy, is that as soon as you got the next lot of dates, would you be able to notify us so we can put them in our diary as soon as possible?
Yeah, of course we can, Chair. Once we've got the dates set for next year, we'll let you all know, and you can get those booked in.
Thank you very much. Can I have some?
Chair, you're muted.
Right, can I have somebody move this policy, please, for the new programme next month? What, April? And then
I'll move it, Chair.
Can I have a seconder, please?
I'll second it then, Chair.
And then can I have all those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Then I take it this motion has been carried. And thank you very much. This concludes the meeting of the live stream will now terminate. To the public with us on YouTube, thank you for watching. And can the facilitator confirm that the live stream has ended, please?